Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Today's guest is a powerhouse in Northeast Florida's real estate market and a woman whose career spans 5 states, multiple industries, and a commitment to excellence at every level. I apologize. Actually, you know what I did?
That's not me.
That's not you. I'm going to stop that.
5 states. I'm going, wait a minute.
Yeah, that was Sharon's.
Yeah.
That's the other Sharon.
Yeah. She is a powerhouse.
I apologize for that.
No,
We'll cut that
fine.
part out, but let me pull up yours because I have yours made up right here as well.
So I loved your...
I was like, hold on a second. That sounded like me the other day.
Yeah, I loved your Chat GPT discussion with Bobby. That was pretty cool. And that you use that for your writing your intros.
I use it for writing the intros, and I use ChatGPT really for all my captions. Actually, one of the agents that I had on was from Canada, and she was. Wrote a book, but I had her on. She's like, you need to be doing doing all your captions. She was really watching what I was doing because I was putting her up on Instagram. She's like, you need to be using ChatGPT for your captions, which really helps you because you have a baseline of things that we want in every caption, all the tags and everything, and then I upload the transcript and I just tell it, what to do. All right, here we go. We're going to restart.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast, where we spotlight the stories, drive, and dedication of top real estate professionals in Northeast Florida. Today's guest brings an incredible blend of business savvy, artistic creativity, and heartfelt service with a background that spans award-winning advertising, film production, community leadership, and 2 decades of real estate success. She's helped more than 500 families navigate one of life's biggest decisions as one half of the team Alters alongside her husband, Frank. She has built a trusted brand in Fleming Island, Orange Park, St. John's, and beyond. She's not just a realtor. She is a community leader, storyteller, and professional with the highest integrity. Let's dive into the story behind the excellence of Sharon Alters. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Good morning.
I'm glad you made it over.
Glad to be here.
Crossed over the bridge this morning with success.
Yeah, the bridge was okay
That's
this
why,
morning.
That's why I don't make these at 9 o'clock in the morning because it would probably take you an extra half hour.
Yeah, it would, and I appreciate that.
But really interested in, and you were talking about Sharon Mills, who I had on the other, get myself in my own camera here, the other day. And when I was reading your bio, and I saw a lot, like you said, resonated with a lot of things she was saying.
Oh, totally.
And both of you, being in the industry as long as you have, especially here in Northeast Florida, the changes in marketplace really gives you a different perspective of what's going on right now. And I'm really curious of just bringing that out and sharing it with the listeners this morning. So.
Yeah, we're really kind of a little bit back to the market that I started in the early 2000s, where it's trending more towards a buyer's market, and buyers are more bold, and sellers are having more difficulty selling their houses. Now it's different reasons now, but actually the interest rate back then was about 8%, 8.5%, 9%, and that's one of the problems we're having is that people today are so used to the low rates that they don't. So I have a chart of historic interest rates that I show people.
Right.
And that shows them that,
But I always, my remark when someone says that is, do you have the historic cost of the home alongside that interest rate? Because that's really what it comes down to.
Well, that's part of it too, is homes are priced higher. And then people are worried about homes depreciating. And so I also have an FHFA graph that shows that homes have appreciated every year except for the years of 2008, 9, 10, those years. But it goes back into the 80s.
I've told the story many times. There was a period, I think it was late 18, 19, or I was working with one of the large builders here in town, and actually started going into COVID, but the cost of construction went up.
Yes, lumber.
Lumber went up, and I went and did some research. Went on YouTube, listened to several different people talk, and really came to the consensus. And they were very direct to it. They made it very simple. In 2007, 8, housing dropped below any low that we had 50 years prior to that. And then it didn't actually make it back up until I want to say 2012 to 14 period, to where it came back to the 50-year low.
Yep.
So that for that period of time, it was such a low. And the mills obviously lost their tail, especially a lot of mom and pop sawmills around the country.
Right.
And now it's consolidated into, I don't know, like 4 or 5 different large companies that are doing it. And their attitude, of course, this is, I was watching videos from 16, 17, 18 time period. Their attitude was, we got to make back for our shareholders that lost their butt during that low time. And they didn't have an interest like building another sawmill or increasing production to keep the cost, because we don't have a wood problem. It's actually just, bringing it to market.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I remember, of course, then you come attentive to every truck that goes up and down 95, or every train that goes by that has lumber stacked on it,
Right.
And they're talking about being stacked up in the yards and so forth. But
wasn't part of it Canada too? I thought that Canadian lumber. That's what I was told anyway.
I'm sure Canada went through the same issues we did.
I mean, but they were sending lumber to us.
Right.
And it was more expensive. That's what a builder told me. That may not have been true, though.
I think it goes back to they held their production at a minimal level to make, even
make
Canada's,
money.
because if our housing was down during that period of time, it wasn't because it was wood. Canada had to make back too. The same companies there, so it wouldn't surprise me, because I'm sure those companies they're such large companies. Everyone knows a lot of their names, like Georgia Pacific and all that kind of. I think is one of them, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah. I did a commercial for them.
But you spent a couple of decades, if I recall, if not longer, in the film industry. So tell us about young Sharon. How did you, what were you thinking about doing? You went to Rollins. What were you thinking about doing as a career, and then how did you end up in the film industry?
So I was an English major, so I was very into liberal arts, not into business. And I graduated from college, and I was dating a guy who was a writer in the ad industry, and I wanted to work for this film company. And I dropped my resume off, and nothing happened. And instead I joined the board of the Atlanta Children's Theater, and I kind of and I did their newsletter, and I kind of got my mojo out there, all the while working in attorneys' offices. I worked for attorneys in college. And so then years later, I got a job in an ad agency, and I was actually the creative producer for them, along with being the admin assistant and hiring a reception like every 3 months. So, and I volunteered for I've always been a big volunteer. So I volunteered for the Screen Actors Guild negotiations on the producer side. And I met the owner of this film company, the same one I had put the resume in and never heard anything from them. And they had an opening for a production assistant. And so he asked me if I wanted to interview. And I did. And when I went in the office, there was this sheet cake over on his desk, and it said, "Am I still in the running?" And I was like, oh my gosh.
Somebody sent him a cake.
Somebody actually sent a cake. I learned who it was later.
Must found out he loved cake.
I don't know, but what I found out is that that's not the kind of industry where they put an ad in the paper, or where you have to know somebody to get those jobs. So anyway, they hired me, and that's how I got in the film business. Yeah. Because I was a creative person, and in fact, I never wanted to be in real estate, because all the people I knew in Atlanta, which is where I lived, that were in real estate were like really hardcore. Like I was like, I don't want to be like that. So I don't know why I thought that many years ago, because I ended up getting into real estate.
Right.
It's like,
what were some of the things, if you could hit some of the high points of your film, industry career, maybe people you've met or places that took you?
So we actually filmed a commercial at Old Faithful in the winter for Georgia Pacific that you just mentioned. Kind of made me. And we did a commercial I met Sally Struthers. We did a commercial with her. Joe Theismann, we did a commercial with him, who's a famous football player at the time. Another guy from Philadelphia, who I can't remember his name, but he was also very famous. We
Not Dr. J or some of that.
no. But so the company I worked for had an extreme level of excellence, like so high that I actually won a CLIO while I was there, which is like the Oscar of advertising. And we were doing commercial for RC Cola, and we went to Tampa because that's where we would film in the winter. And we were in a park, and we actually had the crew pick all the Spanish moss out of the trees in the park. That's the kind of stuff we did.
Right. You mentioned the word excellence, and in the pre-show, you mentioned it because obviously now you're at one Sotheby's and so forth. Is that something that you intrinsically, how you brought up? Because I think there's certain people that have attention to detail different than others, and so forth.
Yes.
And you kind of resonated with this industry.
So my parents were very particular growing up. My father actually started in real estate, in residential, and then became a developer. My mother was like, it was like we had to pronounce words properly, our grammar, all these little things, manners.
Which relates to the English major.
All that, and then I'm an English major, so I'm very, very attention to detail oriented, and I like to be one step ahead of people. And so when I went to work for this company, the owner of the company had a level of excellence and creative vision that just really enhanced what I already was and created the person that I am. Contributed certainly to who I am today.
Right. You made me think a little bit. We mentioned ChatGPT. We were just talking about that a minute ago, and then English major, and you were appreciating that. I was using ChatGPT for a lot of things, and actually, a very important email for a friend of mine last night. He showed me the email he was going to write, and I'm like, no. Let me take that, and I put it into ChatGPT, and based on what he told me, and I put all that information in there, and asked it to write an email, telling it, this is who's writing it, this is who it's going to, this is the goal of the email, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
What is and obviously it writes in proper. Hopefully writes in proper English. I don't know. You might have a different opinion upon that.
Generally, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Of course, when it says it's trying to be like the person using it, right? It tries to understand your personality. Hopefully, it doesn't write the English that I would probably write. Hopefully, it writes it better with better punctuation and everything else like that. But just off because this is off the rails, so to speak, question. But being an English major and expertise in AI, have you just what your vision is for, especially our young people, but even older people like myself or middle age who may not have been an English major, to come across better when they're writing, if they're writing better, and let ChatGPT help them, or any of the AI programs.
It will help you learn to write. I learned to write better when I blog. That's another story. That's what I did to survive the short sale, all that. I did short sales too, but I learned to write with blogging. But AI can definitely help. It's an incredible research tool. It's kind of sad to me that they're not using it and teaching it in public schools. My grandson actually has the privilege of going to a great private school here, and they're teaching them how to use AI, because I use it all the time for research. I use it for my listing descriptions as a start.
Yes.
So I will start and I will ask them to write a conversational one, write a luxury one, sometimes write one to millennials. And
interesting. Depending on the price point or who you think might be a good customer for that.
I will feed it information about a house.
Right.
And I will tell it that it's a very successful real estate agent. And that it has to write a great description, and that it has to be 800 or 1,000 characters also, because I need to be able to plug it in the MLS. So I'll give it features, and then it will write, and then I will take that and look at it and kind of blend it and kind of, because sometimes it's a little bit too much. You need to take some of the words out there, like over the top, words that people don't use. And then often I will go to the seller and show them that, and then we'll work on it together and wordsmith it, because my approach to my real estate is that we're a team. We're working together. And so I will run it by my seller and say, look at this, what do you think? And sometimes they'll have, we need to add this or whatever, and it'll be...
That is brilliance, actually. Because it gets the buy-in from the seller, because you might have forgot to mention something that they think is important.
Exactly.
And the fact that you mention it, or take the recommendation. Hey, you didn't mention this.
Right.
And you add it in there. It makes them feel really good that you're pointing out something that they think is important about the house.
Yeah, it's a collaboration.
Yeah,
we're a team.
That's brilliant. One thing we was Lyman Starmer, the founder of ADDY, who's creating and he's creating the AI home search.
Right.
We were playing with it, and he actually uploaded a picture of a backyard, like a outdoor kitchen type area, and said write a description for listing this home with this picture, and it scans the picture and writes the whole thing. So the one thing I was suggesting, because I guess one of the jokes about agents putting stuff in the MLS is like they'll have a pool home and forget put pool in description.
It drives me crazy. They'll have a waterfront house and forget to put waterfront or forget to put navigable. I mean, it's like that. Don't get me started. I report things to the MLS a lot.
But if you forgot to do that and you sent it over to your seller, he would say, "Oh, there's nothing that says anything about waterfront." Oh my goodness, I forgot. So you would correct it and make them feel good before you even published it.
I would.
Yeah.
Because I'm not perfect, and I mean, I think that the more eyes that lay on it, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it's their house.
Ultimately. So that's a great tip for those who are listening. I would even have it scan the pictures, but I love you actually have it write it a couple different ways. You give who's the potential buyer for this type of home, and obviously it's gotten to know you, I'm sure, over time, and obviously reminded that I'm a high-level real estate agent, and we need to write this very professionally.
Yeah, it's funny what it says about me, because sometimes I'll say that I'm something that I'm not, so I have to watch what I say, because now it started saying, you have this, because I do 100%. Pay for my account.
Yeah.
So I have them on the side, and I do research about all kinds of things.
Yeah. No, you do have to catch it. Like when I do the captions for Instagram or YouTube, if at times it'll actually put a link in there saying this is a link to this agent's Instagram, for example, and it's not a real link, or it will leave a space. So if you just cut and paste it, and there's no link in there, so I'm very conscious now. Like every time I put a new guest on, I make sure I tell it here's their links, Instagram and LinkedIn, and so forth. Yeah, you have to keep reminding it.
You have to watch it. It is a computer after all.
Yeah.
But it's super good for shortcutting. Like I have a Remarkable Paper Pro, and I find it really hard to get questions answered, so I just went there and asked it a bunch of questions about it, and it helped me. I didn't have to watch a YouTube
I'm going to there's an AI class over here at Landmark tomorrow, but one of the things I also been using it for is like when I came here to plan it, I was trying to get my email on my phone, and my previous employer, we went through and we tried to clear all that out, but it would not connect. And after I easily spent 40 minutes, if not an hour, couple calls with IT trying to get it connected. They couldn't figure it out. I went on ChatGPT and I told it what was going on. It gave, here's 3 or 4 things it could be, and I had 15 minutes. I had my email up.
Yep.
It really does, and it'll walk you through a lot of.
It saves you a lot of time.
Yeah, if you want to call a friend, say, "Hey, tell me how to do this." Just go on ChatGPT. It'll be your friend. It'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it helped me troubleshoot a problem with my pen yesterday. I think I broke my pen. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll do amazing things. So dig in there, but I do agree with you on. The schools need to start implementing it. It's here. It's not going away.
It's not going away, no.
Show the kids how to leverage it.
Help them learn how to use it, not just to try to cheat on it, but try to use it as a research tool.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And not trusting it 100%, because it's not, because I've definitely also caught it with things that were
I think it will speed up the educational process that I think has gotten into a lull, because they can quickly go in there and say, hey, give me an important person from World War II who they don't talk about a lot, but has an interesting story. And then boom, it's going to tell you to look up this person, and then you can cross-reference with Google and all those other things, and write a short essay about someone that no one's ever even said anything about, but did something very important.
Right.
It's so great.
I'm having fun with it.
Yeah.
I almost think they're dumbing down Google and DuckDuckGo to drive people to ChatGPT, or else I'm spoiled now. And it's so, because I have trouble getting the answers that I want.
Yeah.
Because everybody's paying to get what they want,
to get all
what
the
they're
advertising,
and so it makes it harder to find what you really want. So I just go over there.
Exactly. Well, every day it's growing the migration over to an AI platform because people, like I said, people want answers. I want the answer. I don't want all this ads and so forth. All right. So you're in the film industry. You're doing well. You're in there. What changes in your life that I guess what makes the break from film to
move
real?
Away from that? Yeah. So I married my husband. He was actually an actor at the time. That's how I met him. And we got married, and we moved back to Jacksonville because his family was here. He was married before, and he had 4 kids. And we wanted to be closer to his children because they were still growing up, and his family. And so we moved back here, and I had a baby, and it was like, there was no, first of all, William Cook Advertising Agency tried to hire me. They called me and said, will you work for us? But I really wanted to be home with my kids. So I just took those years off. And then my husband took a job in Orlando, and then he got back into real estate. And I was working part-time at a market research company called About Orlando. And I was recruiting attorneys, accountants, lawyers for focus groups, and they were paying them $100, which wasn't a lot even back then. And so the owner of the company, I was in her office one day, and she was talking to me, and she caught herself, but she told me, you're almost better. You're really good at recruiting these people. And so I was like, wow, I'm really good at this. And my husband didn't like to make cold calls. And I thought, I can get my real estate license and make cold calls to him because I don't care. And so I
recruit buyers and sellers.
Exactly. Recruit buyers and sellers for him, and then he could take care of them. Right. I wasn't interested in doing real estate, but I'd also read the book Who Moved My Cheese. And so I was realizing that, I'm working here and I'm being paid. I said, I bet I can make more than $10 an hour. So that's how I got into real estate, assuring her I wouldn't quit my job there, but that didn't last long. And then I discovered a passion that I didn't even know was there because I loved it.
Tell us why you love real estate. We're jumping ahead, but go ahead.
Yeah, we can jump ahead because I actually thought about that over here because of watching Sharon's video. It's really the people that have crossed my path that I would never have met otherwise. It's just fascinating. I also love the rush of the adrenaline of bringing something together and making something happen that looked like it might not, but with your creative negotiating and whatever, you make it happen.
Right.
And the people, I have a gift. I've been told I have a gift of getting people to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do, which came in really handy in the film business when we almost got kicked out of a greenhouse while we were filming these little old ladies quilting in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the owner of the house, we didn't know it was rented, called us and told us to get out right away. And so I was able, when somebody is like that with me, I get humble real fast. And I put on my this most polite voice. And
where a lot of people would be
a lot of people would be combative.
Combative.
Like, no, we're here, the renter, not me. I'm like, oh my gosh, we had no idea. This is your house. The guy told us. I mean, we thought it was his house. Please, we're just shooting one scene, and we'll be gone, and we'll leave it better than it was before. And so, he let us stay. But real estate, so by the time I left, we moved from Orlando back here. I had sold a house to everybody in the marketing department at Electronic Arts, which was the studio that did Madden football. I would never have met those people,
Yeah.
If I hadn't been in real estate.
Tell us, so your husband, how long had you been in the industry before you got in?
He had actually started in the industry in the 80s.
So while you were still in the Atlanta...
I was still before I ever met him. Actually, it was maybe in the 70s. And then he moved to Atlanta. He became an actor, moved to Atlanta, and then moved back here and got back into real estate in the 90s. And so and I got my license in 2000.
When do you start making this break to go from just kind of being the, if you want to call it admin, the phone caller, recruiting, to actually going out and shaking hands and showing houses?
So it was really about 6 or 8 months that I made the plunge to do it, and so at the time we had 3 children at home.
Right.
Frank was in real estate. I'm going into real estate. We have no salary. It was kind of scary because I'd always worked for a company with a salary, and so what I said to myself is, failure is not an option. I mean, I was not going to fail. No matter what, I was going to make it. And I did because I loved it. But it was slow at the beginning.
Well, there's a swing there in the early 2000s. Obviously, we hit that peak, right? Yep. I think we kind of even just start to get into 2006 before we start to see things start to...
When I first got into it, it was still a slow market in 2000, 2001. By the time we moved back here in 2004, we had trouble finding a house.
Yeah.
Because the market was heating up. And in 2005 and 2006, I was still going to Orlando 2 or 3 times a week. I did $5 million in business down there when we moved up here because I was still transitioning.
Right.
And I had 2 corporate clients, Electronic Arts and CHEP, that I did a lot of relocation business with. I did a ton of relocation.
It sounds like you did reach into your sphere a little bit during this period of time, like you said, because
yes.
the different people you just mentioned here in the last few minutes these are people you worked with in your film industry, and now you were reaching over to say, hey, I'm in real estate.
Actually, no. No, because the film industry was in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I was living in Orlando. No, I was a really hard worker and a self-starter, and I had an opportunity to do an area tour for relocation at Electronic Arts. And I told, I don't know where I get this. You can call it chutzpah or whatever. But I told them that I was the best person in Watson to do an area tour for somebody with Electronic Arts because I've been in the film business. And they bought it. So I started working there, and I did so well in relocation that people would refer other people, and I actually got in trouble for having so much relocation business with other agents in the office who were jealous. But it wasn't relocation giving it to me. It was me actually giving it back to them because I was being referred, transferring people.
So from that initial experience and your failure not an option mindset that you had, a new agent getting in, or maybe someone who's might be in the business right now 2 or 3 years, and as we know, 70-something% of the agents last year didn't do any business.
That was incredible.
So we know, there's a good group out there that only did a handful of business. They're struggling. What did having that mindset and then putting that mindset to the road, in other words, what are some of the things that you did, maybe even coming out of your comfort zone a little bit, because you were hungry. Failure was not an option. You were going to make this happen. What are some of the things you did?
So showed up every day, went to the office every day. I think new agents, if they're not going to the office, is not good because you need the energy of people around you. You need to hear the conversations of experienced agents, of deals they're talking about. I mean, you can osmose a lot just by talking to an agent.
Yeah.
Also doing open houses. I mean, that's huge. You need to be doing open houses.
Yeah.
You need to let people know that you're in real estate. But
100% I agree with that. I mean, in 2005, I was in Michigan and actually started at Quicken Loans, which is now Rocket. They were all call centers or refi shop. Right. And there is a big difference when you're sitting in those cubes and you're hearing about the deals going on, how you're going to save a deal or overcome an objection and all that kind of things that go on. And if you're, especially so many agents that get in, they really don't know anything about real estate. They get their license, so they know, I guess when to renew and some of the other crazy things they ask you on the test. But when it comes down to the functionality of being a real estate agent and how to handle people, and I mean, obviously you've been in the business a while, but I'm sure new things still come up because every transaction's so different.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we wear a counselor hat. That's one of the many. I mean, there's so many aspects to what a real estate agent does. And to your point, I bring my producer background into real estate because every real estate transaction is a mini production. And so you have all these different components that you have to deal with. But, yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, that tails into it because we were talking a little bit pre-show. I always like to get how that previous career and that mindset of how you were doing business, how would did film production and your routines that we all create in our life to try to be easy, make things easy, create these routines, taking that into real estate.
Well,
tell us a little about that.
Yeah, well, being I was incredibly organized. Number one, I mean, I have incredible attention to detail, and because I was working at such a high level creatively, I also have a very high level of detail to photography, to what's in the house. I mean, I have a stager that I work with that we work very closely together now. And practically every listing that I do is staged in some degree or another, because of my background, I know how important photography is. The very first showing you have in a house is online. So that comes from my production background of knowing what the camera sees and knowing that you have to have a beautiful photograph. Somebody told me once that photography will not sell real estate. Well, maybe not, but it'll get people in the door that maybe otherwise wouldn't get in the door. So does it? Certainly assists.
Well, there's a stat out there the builders know is that their model, people have looked on it a handful of times before they ever actually enter.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it kind of when you first said that, it made me think everyone thinks real estate's going to go to online and AI, right? The real estate agent gets out of the equation. Well, if that's true, then a lot of things are going to be 90% of the deals going to be done by pictures because they can't go and live in the house before they actually buy it.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it's contradictory.
It's very, very
yeah.
contradictory. And as to us going away, a real estate transaction is incredibly emotional for the buyer and the seller. It's one of the top most emotional things that people do, and because people don't do it every 2 weeks or every year or every even 5 years or 10 years, some people, it's important to have someone guiding you through that.
Yeah. I think we were just talking about Lyman and the AI home search. The last mile of the transaction has to be carried on by humans. It's the only way, whether it's the title work and the closing and explaining, it's still a human signing the document and so forth. And the real estate agent still needs to, every negotiation different because every house is different, every address is different. It might be the same model house because we have a lot of those subdivisions, but the address, the view, everything in who took care of it before or didn't take care of it. I mean, it's just, you need that human touch.
You do.
Yeah.
You really do. I mean, and there are things that we know, there are pro tips that we know that people don't know. There were things that I love new construction also. I've done a lot of that. And there are things that I know that, like if somebody's building a house, I mean, they do it now, but they didn't used to do it. Like you want to put outlets on the outside to do Christmas lights, little tiny things like that.
Yeah.
I want when people are doing upgrades, I ask the builder, well, what is the level of upgrades that the other homes are doing in the neighborhood so that they don't over upgrade or under upgrade? And I've had people over upgrade, and I'm like, that you're over upgrading.
You're the white elephant now.
And you're not going to get your money back.
Yeah.
Especially not in 5 years.
Well, since we're on the new construction, and we have so much, obviously, here in Northeast Florida, and we'll continue, especially on the other side of the river, as the expressway goes across there. It's just going to
mushroom.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you do that's maybe unique because of your experience, seeing the last, 20, 25 years in Northeast Florida, the quality of construction today versus 10, 20 years ago, what the people are getting, what are some of the things that you do or you kind of help guide or insist that your buyer does?
So, gosh, that's a loaded question. I haven't done as much relocation lately, to be very honest with you, but I definitely guide the buyer through questions like the specific lot that they're buying, and I help them think about resale, because most people are not buying their forever home. And if I have one more person tell me one more time, this is my forever home, because I just sold 2 forever homes this year. I'm like, I'm not buying it, but because especially if it's a first-time home buyer, they're not thinking about that. And I guide them to do the structural options that they need to do now, and maybe not do some of the other fancy upgrades. I tell the story.
For example.
Well, I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
Of the president of Morrison Homes in Orlando. Bought a house in a beautiful gated community. She had vinyl floors and carpet put in and Formica countertops. And the day she closed, all that was pulled out. And she put in hardwood floors and granite and upgraded the house. But she didn't do it with the builder, because the builders make most of their money on their upgrades. And so I let my buyers know that. And also, if they have the money, then they should put in the lower level and then upgrade it themselves later, which some people do when they're move-up buyers, not first-time buyers.
Mm-hmm.
But
do you occasionally do a kind of a cost analysis on that, though? I mean, because obviously, putting in hardwood, I mean, some of this is labor intensive if you're doing something like that, or
it really depends on somebody. Yes, of course, we do cost analysis, and it depends on someone's tolerance, because some people would rather put it in the mortgage, and if they want to put it in the mortgage, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I had a lady last year who was a first-time home buyer and built a house, and I talked to her, and she chose to do cabinets, which cabinets are hard to do. Structural option. She chose to elongate her porch. Structural option. And she gave up putting in the fancy quartz countertops, which I said, you can do that later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you what's your attitude towards having an inspector during the home new construction process? Yeah. Always.
In fact, I recommend that they do a slab inspection. I recommend that they do all the inspections. Not everybody does. Slab, pre-drywall, and then punch list.
Yeah. The horror stories in to save a few dollars.
I know.
And if you talk to some of the inspectors, everyone goes, well, I got a warranty. Well, yeah, if you find the problem within the first 12 months. Yeah. It could be something that doesn't show up for 2 years later, and there's a pipe broken or whatever.
Right.
I've heard some really.
So builders, site agents often will tell the buyer, well, you can get an inspection at 11 months right before your warranty is up, and you can do that then and we'll fix everything then.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have more leverage now.
Yeah.
Because once you're at 11 months, you've already bought the house.
Yeah. And I don't think people actually calculate the inconvenience if it's something large comes in, like, hey, there's a leak and there's mold. All of a sudden, I got to move out of the house.
Right.
I'm out of the house for who knows. Hopefully, it's only a couple of weeks. It could be, you just don't know. I think that people discount the logistical nightmare that it becomes because you're actually in the house at that time too. They just discount that out. All right. You've worked with like I said pre-show, some of the iconic brokerages here in town, and now you're with one Sotheby's. For agents out there, again, new agents, maybe someone's struggling, hasn't met their, because I do believe a good broker or good people in the office, doesn't necessarily have to be the brokers, but good leadership. And that could be just a top producing agent that gives back in the office. How important it is to surround yourself or find that tribe, as some people like to say, in the brokerage, where they're always adding value and helping, looking after, trying to make you a better person or better real estate agent.
Absolutely. And both Watson and Coldwell Banker do that, and Sotheby's does as well. But I think there are a lot of small brokerages, and I'm not as familiar with them. And I'm sure that some of them do offer training, but let's face it, it costs money and resources. And so I aligned myself with Watson. Watson had excellent training, and that's where I started in real estate in Orlando. And then we moved back up here, and then I had an opportunity with Coldwell Banker, and they had an entire marketing department. And that was just like for me, with my production background, I was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
So I think that newer agents really need to look at their broker and what kind of a culture are they going to offer them, because a lot of people say we have training and they say we do this, but they don't really have the support, really. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's one. I think. Yeah, it could be this gadget as you guys are throwing stuff all the time.
Right.
Oh, hey, yeah, we just got this new stuff, but how's it actually?
If you don't implement it and have support on learning how to use the new gadget, and people don't use it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do any good.
I think CRMs are one of the biggest. One of the challenges I think in the mortgage business, I've told differently. You have all this technology, but if you don't have someone who's actually daily implementing, because as salespeople, a real estate agent, mortgage loan, we're soldiers. We're out there. We're primarily, we are doing a lot of marketing, but you need that person who's kind of in that, who likes to sit in the cube and who can, fire off these things, create these nice emails. And I obviously, leads to my next question is, you saw a need and went to Coldwell Banker, or saw a value and went to Coldwell Banker roughly 15 years ago. But 15 years later, now you're at Sotheby's because things have changed.
Right.
Tell us what was, you said, I think you said marketing was one of the things you went to Coldwell Banker. 2010-ish, what was marketing like then? And then obviously today, it's probably, what you're doing is totally different.
Oh, yes. We're doing a lot more videos today and aerials. And one of the things about Sotheby, I don't know, Sotheby's is just very elevated and sophisticated. They do sell all level properties. It's not like, oh, well, we won't take your house if it's under $1 million. But for me and where I was in my career, it really appealed to me. Plus, the girl that recruited me was in the film business. And as I told you, I wasn't looking to change brokers.
Right.
And she called me, and we got to talking about the film business. And I was like, I'll just have lunch with her and talk about the film business. But then she started telling me things, and she showed me this relocation book that was just like blew me away. And that was one of the things that we didn't have anymore. It was a relocation book.
Right.
So,
well, agents are, they move brokerages. Some I've seen do it a couple times, 3 times in a year. They're looking for something. You spent time at Watson and Coldwell Banker. You spent a significant amount of time. If they don't think they're getting value at that current brokerage that they're at right now, what cautions would you put forth to them before just making a hasty move to something that may just be another place where they're not going to find the value? What are some of the questions, some of the investigation that they should do to really find, hopefully the next one is one they're going to spend some time at?
Well, I think you need to definitely interview with your broker manager, the person who's going to have your back, the person you're going to have to go to get approval, and find out what their availability is. Are they available? Or are you going to be calling them and leaving voicemails, and they're not going to get back to you for a few hours or late that night or the next morning?
Right.
I also think the culture of the office, going to sales meetings, or just if you can, it's kind of hard. When you change brokerages, you can't just go tell everybody I'm thinking about changing a brokerage. Or even when you do it, you don't talk about it either.
Right.
Like, you just kind of leave, and then people are like, I haven't seen so-and-so for a while.
Right.
So...
Or they're calling you going, oh, we didn't know you had this issue. Yeah.
Exactly. But the other thing is, when you change brokerages, every time you change, you're the new kid on the block.
Yeah.
So if you keep doing that, and then you get a reputation for being somebody that doesn't stay around long, so is anybody really going to invest in you and want to,
That's an interesting concept there. Now, a lot of agents in the area, Real are one of our cloud brokerages, if you want to call them that, is fairly hot right now.
They are.
But what I am seeing is a lot of newer agents going over there. And that's kind of my caution to the wind, because I kind of think
concerning to me.
Yeah.
Because they don't have brick and mortar, and so where is their culture? Like, where is the place they can go to anchor themselves and to talk to a seasoned agent? I have agents that, I mean, we collaborate all the time, you know, like text each other, just kind of questions and sounding boards because real estate, I mean, you get into some complex situations in negotiating and with people and, you know, how do I handle this situation?
The importance, because you just mentioned brick and mortar, but you gestured to it earlier, the importance of going to the office, going to the sales meetings, because I think you know, you're on that side of the industry. There is a lot of collaboration. There can be sharing tips and things, but sometimes when things change in the industry and you've got the latest thing, if you're in a cloud-based brokerage and your other people are like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody just yet, they'll figure it out and then we'll talk about it when they do. You may be missing because you don't have that broker who's out in front making sure you have the information at the time it actually gets out there in lightning speed, you know, well, kind of like 24/7 news. I mean, are you getting the information that you should need? And especially right now, as I think our market is really changing, evolving every day. Okay, the houses are sitting on the longer. What do we do? It's this price point. What do we do? These are stuff I imagine you're talking in having those sales meetings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one big thing that happened last year was all the forms that changed with all the lawsuit, all the buyer broker agreements, the showing agreements, the pre-touring agreements. We went to the FAR contract, so we changed that, and that has like 24 addenda. I mean, it's like. And what do these people do? Well, I'll tell you what they do. When people like me get on the other side of people like them, we coach them and help them through the transaction.
Yeah.
And we even to the point of saying, did you really mean to, you know, check that box? Because actually you're not going to be paid a commission if you do that.
Right, exactly. Well, I was going over at the time because I did some podcasts on that with some people to give some insight, and I went and sat at some of these kind of open mastermind sessions, and so you had a potpourri of different people in there, coming from different brokerages, and when you said that, it made me think of a couple of people who were sort of disconnected. They weren't at a Watson or a Coldwell Banker where you're having that salesman. You have someone like Kim Knapp, making sure everybody knows what they need to know.
Oh yeah.
And the statements that are made because they're hearing something. Where did they get that information? I think if you weren't listening to Florida Realtors and their videos of more factual, like this is how it is.
Right.
And then going to your broker and say, well, how does that actually meet the road? You know, you could have, we know people were lost and still lost.
They're still lost.
Yeah.
And they're going to be because they don't have anybody that they can go talk to.
Yeah.
That they can actually walk in their office and show them a document and say, you know, what's up with this. Now, when you get to where I am, it's not as important. Like, I don't go in the office very often. I never did before either, but I don't need to. But I have my network of people that I can pick up the phone and I can text and I can collaborate that way.
Right.
So,
but back in your early part, but you had years of experience before you started getting further away. And obviously technology's changed to where you can communicate or Zoom call or something.
And Zoom meetings.
Become more important.
Exactly.
Let's dig a little bit into your mindset of being a real estate agent on a daily basis. What are some of the things that you have created? Are you a time blocker? How do you structure your business and run it like a business?
So I mentioned Ninja. I went to the Ninja installation in 2020. Coldwell Banker brought them to us. And I fell in love with that way of doing business. So much so that I'm actually coaching now. And so much so that I've been to the Ninja installation 6 times. And the 7th time, God willing, I'll go next year again. And now we have a group of us that goes to Colorado, to Larry Kendall, Fort Collins. And so I model my business after that. And that is a morning routine where you have gratitudes, affirmations, you write notes to people, you make sure you have a number of people that you talk to. You keep in touch with all your people. It's a system to build relationships with your people. And that's how I run my business. And yes, I do time block my business. I work on my business in the morning. This is an exception that I'm here.
Okay.
Because normally I don't do things in the morning unless I have to. I mean, if I have a closing or an inspection, but I try to do that and then work in my business in the afternoon.
Right. Some people would say, well, there's actually a couple questions there. Can you reach out to someone too often? How do you, when you're touching, like you say, you're touching your people, your sphere. What is a routine? Do you chart like, hey, I spoke to so and so, so you don't like call them again next Monday? Like, hey, we just talked last week. Oh, great, did you have a great weekend? Okay.
Oh yeah, I forgot. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I have a database, and I take notes in my database, and I keep track of my people. And I love what Sharon said, and I really took that to heart, and I'm going to think about that, about some people, because one of the things that I've learned about in real estate, and I think everybody should know, is personality profiles, the DISC profile. You got your power people, you got your fun party people, you've got your accountant type people, and your very peaceful people, right? And with a high driving D personality, they don't want to talk to you every whatever. In fact, they don't want to talk to you at all.
Until they're ready to do something.
Until they're ready to do something with you. So with those people, I'm gonna rethink that, and I'm gonna talk to my coach about that, because yes, my top like 100 people, I need to keep in touch with them way more often and see them and have lunch and dinner with them and just keep in touch with them. What
are some of the things that you do? Because I imagine with your time experience, you have some people who are truly a billboard for you. They are definitely driving business. They're giving you whatever amount of referrals a year or just over time, have been your cheerleader, sharing you with others, and obviously referrals. What are some special things that you do with them to recognize?
Mostly it's social, because I'm very social. I love to, I'm a foodie, so I love really good food, and I love taking them and introducing them to really good restaurants. I introduced some buyers and sellers to La Chena. It's a restaurant in Murray Hill. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's an incredible, well, that's right, that's the thing. You haven't heard of it, but it's amazing. It doesn't even have a sign. It's one of those
I think I was going to ask you that. Is this when you have to make a reservation? There's no sign up. It's the greatest Italian food.
Ah, my gosh. It's amazing. And the owner makes everything, and he's OCD. Like,
what's the name of it?
LACENA, La Chena, and it's on Edgewood Avenue.
And you have to call and make a reservation only.
You have to make a reservation only, and if you make a reservation and you don't go, he's going to block you. He told me that. Like, you're never going to get in again. I mean, he takes it very seriously. I asked him about the sign one time, and he said, "Oh yeah, we had a sign and it blew away in a storm." And I'm like, "That's because you don't need a sign."
I've heard about that place before. That's just I've got to go test. And I think it's actually important for probably anyone listening to probably, what is he doing? That is because there's a lot of good food, and I'm sure his food is above and beyond. But there's got to be something else he's doing in there.
He's very personal with the people. It's not a big restaurant,
right?
And they just serve beer and wine. They don't serve alcohol. But he hand makes many of the noodles. I mean, the dishes are dishes that you won't see on any other Italian menu. So, I mean, it's his personal touch and the way that he exceptionally cares about his product.
Taking that, share, because I can only assume your success, and having talked to so many successful real estate agents, there's a little bit of that. Now, you're not making your people noodles and stuff like that, but when it becomes down, and you listen to Sharon the other day, Sharon Mills, talk about really how she just builds that relationship with them, gets great confidence. Some of the things we were talking about was sometimes she's come back and said something to customers, even the other agents client, and at just the right time, because she's earned that respect, she's earned that confidence, and so forth.
Right.
But tell us a little bit what you found and what you've put into your business to really, I guess, kind of create that relationship with the client. Because the more experience, the more confidence you have, in theory, and your ability to what you can say and ask and start to I won't say control is not really the right word for the client, but really guide them better.
So it's important to be honest with people, and if they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, you need to let them know you don't know the answer, but you'll get it for them. Mm-hmm. And it's also important to stay one step ahead of people if you can anticipate what they're going to be asking or needing. Like when I go out with buyers and they see a house for sale and like, oh, look at that one, or what's sold in the neighborhood, I already have all the data for all of that, for all the neighborhoods that we go to. But with sellers, I just don't know when to quit. That's kind of Tom saying I have a heart the size of Texas. Is I just overdo everything. Like, I just don't know. I just want to keep going and going and going and going, and I just think I do details that other people don't do. I have a seller right now, a listing that's under contract, and the seller told me, because I helped them buy the house, he said, I bought a number of houses over my lifetime, and he went on to tell me about them, and he said, you're the first real estate agent I've used twice. And I was like, wow. And he's like, no, you earned it because of the attention to detail that I gave, because it was a very difficult transaction when they bought their house, and I always go to bat for everybody. I mean, it's just who I am. It's how I'm wired. It's how I'm made. I don't know how to do it any other way. I recently had a buyer tell me that he thinks I do my business like a ministry. Because, if I make a mistake, I pay for it. I don't ask them to pay for it. I pay for it. It costs me money out of my pocket, but my reputation is priceless.
Right. When you talk about the attention to detail going on, going the extra miles, I'd call it, giving them 110%. For someone who hasn't had enough transactions. Now, I've had some agents on and that have said they actually try to find something that they can demonstrate that they're going the extra mile. They just try to find something, whether when they're listing the house, just to do something that is above and beyond that they know the average agent's not going to do. Give us a couple things that, like, you've probably you have 500 transactions to choose from, but just some of the things that you've done that you feel is that extra mile and has obviously wowed the customer.
A buyer packet for buyers. Before you go out, I have a buyer consultation with buyers before I go out with them, and I talk to them about what they want. And if it's a couple, I have each one write down things they want in the house, and then star like their top 3 and what are their deal breakers. And we know about that before we go out and look. And I used to talk about the 80-20 Pareto principle, that you can generally find 80% of what you want in a house, and then Ninja talks about 85%. So we talk about that before we go out, okay? And I think that is one thing that sets me apart, because when people setting expectations, because when people understand we're not going to find 100%, and Bobby Jean said, not even when you build a house, and that's true. You never get 100%. Even with an unlimited budget, there's something that you'll have to do in your next house.
Right.
And so that's one thing. And then the other thing...
Do you think that helps resolve future possible conflicts that they're going to have even within themselves?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Because then they know up front what they are. Like, I have some buyers I'm working with now, and I did a buyer consultation with them a couple of years ago, and they decided not to buy, and now they're buying. It's their first home. And I showed them houses. I went ahead and started, and then I realized, wait a minute, we need to have a timeout. And so I have an appointment with them Saturday to refresh their consultation, because they're going like that.
Yeah.
They're not on the same page.
And for agents out there, because this happens a lot, you know, especially if the husband and wife are, you know, it's like the husband will say, "Oh, my wife's going to make all the decisions," until he does,
Right.
until all of a sudden a decision needs to be made, and all of a sudden he intercedes and then throws a whirlwind in it.
Exactly.
But because you could waste a lot of time, if not even lose a buyer right now, which are, you know, everyone has a lot of listings. They go, send me a buyer, send me a buyer, right? You could lose them because they can analysis paralysis themselves into not doing anything.
They can.
And obviously if they're not on the same page, to get them on the same page so you can do what you do,
right,
which is guide them and show them, you know, what's the best homes out there for what they want.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes the home is not, and I'm honest with people, you know, and sometimes people don't buy a house because I'm not going to be, I'm going to be completely honest and transparent with people.
Right.
I don't count my money before I have it. I don't even think about it. I think about helping people.
Well, it's an ism at Rocket, because Dan Gilbert was big on isms. I can't quote it perfectly, but basically, is do the right thing and the money will follow.
Exactly.
So, yeah, going the extra mile, and then obviously, because I think, and I say this a lot on the show, I think a lot of agents, you know, probably probably those 70% out there that didn't do a deal last year are only because they're running their business only looking 30, 60, 90 days in advance. They don't realize that person in front of you is the best marketing after they close with you and they have that great transaction. That's the best marketing you could have.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And they're counting their dollars. That's why a lot of people get their license. They're like, wow, you made $10,000, you know, wow, you made this. Well, yeah, but they don't think about they're just thinking about a paycheck. They're not thinking about everything that goes into it.
Yeah. Drive around, show a house, spend a few hours doing that and get a check. I always like to talk about grit. You might have picked it up in a couple of my episodes because you listened to it. Angela Duckworth, I throw her name out there all the time, but it's a great book for people to read.
Yeah, I'm going to have to listen to that.
Yeah. She does this, what really, I forget what it was. I was talking to someone about, you know, taking my knowledge here, obviously from the podcast, doing a book, and obviously, you know, you go and you speak. And I really wanted the underlying meaning because of all the agents that I've met, there's a huge level of grit. You had a huge level of grit when you said, you know, failure's not an option. That's a huge level of grit to say it at the beginning, you know, to set that standard. I'm not failing at this. And you were going to do whatever it took to win. That's a level of grit right there. And Angela talks about, you know, all the different things, but the one thing we don't know is really how to, and she admits there's no real way to measure. She has statistics that say, well, yeah, these people that shown really good grit, they did have this, or they did this in school, or they belong to this, or whatever. You know, some things, some correlations, but there's no definition of how to be a gritful person, I guess you could say that. But I break it down. When I was trying to do the talk, LLC, we talked a little bit earlier about why you love real estate. I think you have to have a level of humor. I call it laughter. So that's the second L in my LLC, because comes up with challenges. You get into business and all of a sudden you really you're starting to get going, and all of a sudden 2007, 8, 9 come around. You have to almost reinvent yourself.
I did.
How do you do short sales and stuff? Nobody knew how to do them. I
did them and nobody wanted to.
Yeah.
So I was like, bring them on.
Well, that's why you're still here.
That's exactly why I'm still. That and blogging. Yes.
Yeah. Tell us a time that maybe you probably share at cocktail parties now, just a transaction that really just hits you sideways, maybe punch you in the gut, maybe you even challenge yourself of why am I even in real estate, or you know, or maybe even a point, you know, the laughter part is probably even a point of almost firing a client because you obviously rectified the deal, saved it, but you laugh about it now when something like that comes up.
So early on in real estate, I had a guy, this is when I lived in Orlando, and I was doing a lot of relocation, and he was coming in with a company, and he was incredibly demanding. I mean, he had OCD, like, really badly. But a nice guy, but just So I wrote 5 contracts.
Do you get the
him.
Jekyll and Hyde conversation? Like one time he talks to you and he's really nice, and then the next time he's like,
No, he was always, he was always on. So so anyway, I wrote 5 contracts for him, which I'm because I work for attorneys and I understand contracts, and I very much protected myself and said, you're going to have a binder for each one of these contracts. This one binder doesn't do. And something that I did, this is something that set me apart from the very beginning, is in the contract that we were using at the time, which was the FAR Bar, it had an addendum for sole discretion, but it wasn't in the offer. And I always put it in the offer that the buyer, in their sole discretion, all that, and get their deposit back. Mm-hmm. And he picked this house, and there was one termite tunnel like in the garage, and he was going to buy that house, and he didn't buy that house, and he got his deposit back because I had that in there. Whereas 99% of agents at that time, in fact, my broker didn't even teach me that. I just picked up on it and started doing it. And so I still think about that. I still think about that attention, those little things that I put in. And just like now, we've changed our contract and we had a new way to request repairs, but it didn't have the language of the old repair. It was just kind of blank. And so it didn't say, well, you have to have it done by a properly licensed person, and it has to be done to workmanlike standards and things like that I pick up on.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Well, well, I imagine to this gentleman you probably look good, although the little repair that probably would have been made to correct the termite thing.
Well, it was termites. Well, he thought that he was moving from up north, and so people from up north are terrified of termites and alligators, right? Right? Yeah. I mean, there's so much bad press around both, and hurricanes, but he was convinced that the house was going to fall down, mm-hmm. and so he did not want to buy, that house, even though there was probably nothing wrong, and it would
with the rest of it, yeah.
But I've never forgotten that, because if I hadn't done that, it would have been a whole different. It would have been bad, ugly.
Yeah. The C is for consistency. What do you again, this may has evolved over, well, I'm sure it has over time, but what are you doing today consistently that you feel moves the needle in your business, keeps moving it forward?
I keep in touch with my main people, and I think that consistently moves the needle forward. I don't lose track of my top people that refer business to me, and frankly, that I love. I mean, there are people, you bond with some people more than others, mm-hmm. and some people, they're great people, but, you just don't keep as close a touch with them. But I keep in touch with people, and I have a CRM, and I keep up with my CRM. I think that any real estate agent who doesn't have a database is making a big mistake, because how are you going to keep up with your people? How are you going to know you called the guy? Remember that you called somebody 2 weeks ago.
Right. And I think you're already diving in to AI, and you're far enough along in your business. You probably could have. I wouldn't say you really didn't need it, because I think there's agents out there. Well, I've been doing this so long. Let the new kids on the block, let them play with that AI stuff. But you have opened your eyes to it and say, hey, how can this save me some time, make my life easier?
So that's my person. I'm a serial learner, mm-hmm. and I have to guard myself because I want to learn about everything, and I have to have my.
What do you have time for?
when I have time for, which I don't have time for everything, but for instance, when I got into real estate and we moved back up here, so I got into real estate right after those books. Thank God I never had to do the books. It was on computers. And everybody had pagers. I had a cell phone, right? Mm-hmm. Baby cell phone, clamshell. And the older realtors were complaining, I don't want anybody to call me. They can page me and I'll call them back. And I'm like, and I thought to myself, you guys are dinosaurs. You're not going to be around long. And surely they all faded by the wayside. Well, I still feel the same way. I think that real estate is evolving. I have to continue to reinvent myself to stay relevant. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as I quit learning and reinventing myself, I'm going to fall behind.
It's actually common sense, but I don't think enough people actually
they don't
grasp it, because the reality is this: where are your customers are at? do your customers expect you to answer the phone today in 2025? Or if they got something like, hey, enter your number because this is a pager, they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
And they'd hang up the phone.
They would.
One of the, whether you're in the mortgage business or whether you're in the real estate business, one of the first things to say is answer your phone.
Right.
That's like the number one requirement, I think, probably in any sales is you got to pick up the phone.
People don't.
You're not the only one out here selling real estate. There's other options.
That's right.
In being proactive. How are you? We talked about it a little bit pre-show. We were talking about how are you using AI in your business right now, directly or even, and I won't say this because I think a lot of us are on the edge of like, how can we use it more effectively? We talked about the listing descriptions and so forth. That's kind of 101, I guess, in how real estate agents are using it. Are you digging into any other areas?
I am. I actually used it to do some research on pool companies in Jacksonville last week for a buyer who's looking at a house that doesn't have a pool and they want to have a pool. I am interviewing for a riverfront listing where they had a new kind of dock, a flow-through dock, and I used it for research on that and cost of docks, and it just saves me a lot of time because you can pick up the phone and call people, but I'm the type of person that likes to have a little background first because I can have a more intelligent conversation when I do pick up the phone and call the pool company and talk to them because I'm a control freak. Maybe you could call me, because I don't like for somebody just to pick up the phone and just call some random whatever company. I like to have some research and recommend good companies.
Start to think of some questions you might want to ask when you have that conversation. That's actually brilliant. You're calling them, because AI is going to point out what are the benefits of this, what are the cons against this, and then be able to ask questions against them and see what their response is to get the human part of it as someone who's actually touching and feeling those docs. To understand that, and actually, so you can then transfer it over to your clients. I mean, that's actually brilliant. We talked a little bit about, obviously you being an English major, so you responding in emails. But for those, I was just thinking a tip. If you're not an English major like myself and squeezed by in college as far as English is concerned, when you are telling ChatGPT what you want your email to say, you start pulling back, so you're maybe not don't come across as offensive,
right?
Because you're telling it what you want versus you doing it, and your emotions are going right through your fingertips onto the keyboard and into the email. That having ChatGPT review your email, rewrite it in a softer tone or something, and obviously tell it what is the goal of the email. What do you want to happen at the end of this conversation?
Yeah, because email is very flat, and texts are very flat, and it's easy to miscommunicate. And so I definitely think that restraint is good in emails. Less is more. And I use ChatGPT for emails as well. I also used it. I have a marshfront listing up in Yulee, and it's in an area where there aren't many sales and trying to get comps, and so I was hoping that ChatGPT might be able to help me find something that I haven't been able to find up there, something that had sold on the marshfront that wasn't in the MLS. I can't find it in public records, because I can't wait for Lyman's search.
Yes.
Because that's exactly the type of thing that his search helps with.
Right. You could really drill it down. Hey, this is the area. I need to within so many miles and that sort of thing. Yeah. Because that's where it's going. And, Tom and I were talking just this morning. It may not be tomorrow because it is, but in 2 to 3 years, this is how I think it's going to be the tipping point, and people are.
We're just there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add today, Sharon?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean,
we could talk for hours.
Fun. We could definitely talk for hours. I mean, this has been it's been fun.
Yeah. Let's finish with this. It's a different market right now. What is your listing strategy? How are you, because I imagine you've got some listings. Some of them may have been sitting. There's other homes that come on the market and they're just the perfect address. It's the ideal price point and it's gone that weekend. That still does happen.
I had multiple offers on one recently.
Yeah. How do you what is your mindset when you're going in on that listing, consultation, and prepping your clients who are trying to sell their home, and it may be the $1 million home in Nocatee, which there's a lot of them it's starting to grow out there, and there's quite a few listings, for example, at a price point that's not, it's not 300,000.
Right.
Where almost most reasonable people can buy 300, but $1 million, you're in a totally different clientele, and you have so much competition. How do you prep yourself? What's the mindset? What do you like to at the end of that consultation? I guess what the word I want to get to is, how do you get that client to understand your confidence, your professionality, that hey, okay, we need to do price reduction. If we, how do you set the tone? I guess that's probably the word.
Today's market is a market, again, where we have to look at what's available and what's on the market and what our competition is for going down in price instead of going up in price like it was in 2022. Because you can't really look in the rearview mirror, because what's sold in the rearview mirror, your house may sell for less than that. And so I do talk a lot about original list price as opposed to what houses actually sell for, and the fact that many sellers, and I compare original list price to what a house sells for. And in one particular neighborhood, I just told a seller this a couple of weeks ago, the people that sold in that neighborhood who actually closed, they actually came down 10 to 12% over their original list price.
Wow.
Because the main three things in real estate are location, condition, right, and price. And you can't change the location. You can improve the condition, but what if you're already top shelf condition? The only thing you have is your price. And there have been a lot of houses that have been overpriced right now and that need to come down. And I've done it with a couple of my listings, and thankfully everything sells. But then I've had other listings that were like cream puffs that had multiple offers.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think the agents out there that are listing some of these houses over, is just they just don't have the confidence, or the market's just changing so fast? It's like the rug being pulled out from you.
The market's changing, because here's what happens. There are people who need to move. They've got to sell their house, and so they're going to do whatever they have to do to sell their house. And if it's not selling at this price, and they're not going to change the condition of it, they're going to have to come down in the price.
Right.
And so that's what we're seeing. And then all of a sudden you have a new comp. So you have to look at that new comp.
So a new agent, maybe has only listed a few homes in their entire career. What are some things that they should be doing before running out there on that listing?
I think that they should go preview the listings that are comparable to that, if possible. Anything that they can get.
Go out and actually physically look at the homes that are.
Physically look at the homes, including ones that are under contract, including active contingent listings. I had a listing this year in Avondale that I did that with, because when you get into historic homes, the level of, people will say, yeah, we redid our wiring, everything's fine. Yeah, there's no cloth wiring.
Except in that room.
Yeah, there is. When you do the inspection, we forgot about that. So really, and also I talk to other agents. I would tell a new agent that you will get your most valuable information by talking to other listing agents. And if you talk nicely to them and get a good rapport, they will tell you things, and sometimes they will tell you things maybe they shouldn't.
Yep.
But they'll give you a lot of information.
Or mistakes they made, so you don't make that same mistake in there.
Right.
So you said, if I heard you correctly, the house was under contract, but you still went over and actually
preview it.
Yep. Because it was listed here, it's sold here, but now you have that information and you can actually tell your client, I went over and saw that house. They listed it at $1 million. They got under contract at $950. Here's the situation. Here's how your house compares to that house.
Yeah, and I can tell that to other agents too, and I can tell that to the appraiser as well. So when I have an appraisal on my listings, I pull the lockbox. Not because I'm mean, but because I want to meet the appraiser, and I want to be sure that they get all the information that I have about the listing. And also, I would, if they have time, I would like to have a conversation with them and gather some information from me. Because again, if you have you can learn a lot from an appraiser
Right.
about how they're valuing things. So I just, everywhere I can learn.
Which at times it's more important than others. And
Yes.
be doing it consistently, you'll have that rapport and
Right.
so forth with them. And obviously, I think one of the immediate benefits of having that conversation, having that relationship with the appraiser, is being able to transfer that information to your buyer or seller in confidence. This is why we're listing it for this, or this is why we should make the offer at that.
Exactly.
Because I know 10 years of talking to appraisers and so forth, and
Right.
That work this area. This is what
the values
this is why we do
are.
it. Yeah. I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
It's been a great conversation. Like I said, we could definitely talk for hours.
We could. But we
All
have
right.
life.